Hi everybody and welcome to the Truck King YouTube channel. We've got an exciting comparison today because we have two different Yamaha Wavrunner models that are opposites. This is the GP1800R. This thing is a race machine. It's got no fancy features, but it's gonna tear up the water. Whereas over here, we have the FX Cruiser, heavy emphasis on the cruiser. This is the kind of machine where you wanna take your family out and spend a day just relaxing out in the sunshine. So if you go to the Yamaha dealership, which one of these Waverunners should you buy? That's exactly the question I want to answer in this video. So you know we're going to drag race these two models, we're going to see how they handle, and then we'll talk about the price and which one you should leave the dealership with. We have to, of course, compare all the features here, and these two units are actually similarly outfitted, but you're going to see a lot of the differences. For instance, they both have boarding steps for when you're swimming, but see on the GP1800, much skinnier, a much smaller step. It's going to work, it's going to be a little harder to use. Here on the Cruiser, way bigger, way thicker. This step is actually padded, so it's going to actually feel nice on your knees or on your feet when you're climbing up. Those are those little differences that make this Cruiser so much more expensive, but that also make the GP1800 here that much lighter. Now we move forward to the seats, and the seats are quite different too. Look at the seat on this Cruiser. It's got all of this bolstering for all three of your passengers. This is all about maximum comfort, whereas you come over here, this doesn't even really look like a three-seat model. This is obviously designed for the rider that's up front and nobody else on the back. They're both three-seaters, but the way the seats are designed is going to make a huge difference to your passengers. Now we can talk storage a little bit. They both have actually the identical rear seat storage bin. That's the GP1800. It's also over here on the FX Cruiser. Same little bin. And then under the front of the seat, you have the engine. Now these are the same engines as well, but there's a big difference. FX Cruiser is supercharged. This GP1800R is naturally aspirated. Here in the FX Cruiser, we're talking about 250 horsepower, although that's not officially rated by Yamaha, but it's 250. And over here, we have 180 horsepower. So there is a pretty big split between these two models. Another one of the big splits you're gonna see is with the info cluster screens up here. On the FX Cruiser, we have Yamaha's Connect infotainment system. That's actually a touchscreen up there. I can show you all the operation of it here. Over here on the GP1800, there's no touchscreen to be found. It's just a little LCD display. Very simple, gives you all the info that you need. But again, these are some of the differences where you can really feel why this FX Cruiser is going to be so much more expensive. Now you need to know the price difference. Here in Canada, this Yamaha GP1800R costs $17,699, whereas this FX Cruiser is going to sell for $23,199, and I will throw up the US prices right here on screen for you. Now this might seem like a little thing, but you see the gas cap there. You can always get to the gas tank on the FX Cruiser. You don't have to open the nose. Here on the GP1800, you have to open this nose to get to this fuel cap to fill it up. Now the other thing you're going to notice here, way more storage here in the FX Cruiser, a much bigger opening. It's packed with life jackets right now, but this thing is quite deep. Here on the GP, they just did not prioritize storage. The opening is much smaller. You're not going to fit as much stuff in there. The differences once you actually hit the water here are going to be dictated by a few different things. First of all, this GP1800 has just a different hull design and a different intake rate and a different ride plate back there on the back. And actually I can show you them now on the trailer so you can really see the differences. So here on the FX Cruiser, you might not be able to see it too much, but this hull doesn't have too many sort of cuts in it. It's fairly smooth. Whereas when you look at the hull here on the GP, it is a much more deep V hull. Down there at the bottom, this point right here is a lot sharper than on the other hull. So you can just see this is kind of that big deep V with the point in the bottom. This is much smoother, much more rounded down here at the bottom. And that's what helps to make this FX so comfortable in the water, and what helps this GP1800 absolutely bite in the water. So this GP1800R is 88 pounds lighter than the FX Cruiser. It's also 2 inches shorter and 2 inches skinnier, while this model is 9 inches longer. So this GP1800 is designed to be small, short, nimble, and lightweight, whereas the FX here, it's really not concerned about being a big machine. When comparing this model with that GP1800, you gotta just talk about fancy features, and here's one right here. This is Yamaha's TDE docking mode. I'm not touching the throttle. It allows me to bring the machine in extremely slowly, and then I can put it in reverse, back to neutral, and look how easy that was. And again, on this FX Cruiser, you're getting all of Yamaha's most fancy features. You're getting cruise control, you're getting that docking feature, and then of course that Connect touch screen. So outside of just how this thing rides and the powertrain, there's a lot of features here that you're not going to see on that GP1800. So I talked about the size difference, and it really does show when you're in the water. This FX Cruiser feels huge out here. You can really feel the height too. It comes quite a bit taller than that GP does, and you know, it just feels like a much more substantial unit around you, and that kind of takes away from some of that sort of nimble, fun handling feeling. Now, when you throw the FX Cruiser into a corner, does it bite pretty well? Yes, but it's a mixture here. You can feel some of the bite, and then you can start to feel that it wants to break loose. It wants to break traction. So there really is sort of a best of both worlds thing going on here. Can you ride it hard and have a ton of fun? Absolutely. But if you're just out cruising all day long, it's not like it's forcing you to really hold on and grip it hard. Unlike that GP, the GP1800R, when you throw it into a corner, it bites so hard that if you're not ready for it, you could easily get thrown off the high side of that unit. And that's really the difference. With the GP1800 Sport Focus, the handling is so sharp and so crisp. FX Cruiser here, it has maybe half of the crisp handling of the GP1800. So when you're throwing it into tight corners, it's just a world of difference. Now it's drag race time, everybody. There's FX Cruiser supercharged, GP1800 non-supercharged, and we're gonna drag race them. Let's see what happens in 3, 2, 1, go! Stability between these two is not massively different. This FX Cruiser comes in at 50 inches wide, so it's 2 inches wider than the GP. Again, you're not gonna feel a big difference, but let me just show you that I can stand on this footwell. This one actually does feel more stable. The GP, I can take on some water. This FX Cruiser, I really got to start working to get it to take on water. But the stability of these machines today is absolutely incredible. And climbing in from the water too, if you were swimming, is much easier than it ever has been because these machines are so big and so heavy. So by now you've probably already figured out there are pros and cons to both of these models. This FX Cruiser is if you want the most comfort and power in the Yamaha lineup, plus all of the fancy features. Whereas this GP1800R is if you want a machine that is hyper focused on watercraft performance. Now, does that mean that the FX doesn't perform or that the GP800 isn't comfortable? No, but you need to choose which one of these two machines you go for based on its compromises. Now, at the end of the day, if it was my money and I was laying it down, I'm bringing home a GP1800R just because of the way that this thing handles. I don't need all of those unnecessary things like cruise control or that docking system. I can figure all that out on my own. I just want a machine that's going to offer absolute performance, and this machine is so intense that I know I could own it for the next 20 years and I'm never going to get bored with it. So everybody, that is it for this one. Now I want you to go below in the comments, let me know what you think. Which one of these Waverunners would you buy? And as always, while you're down there, hit like, hit that subscribe button, and then come right back here to the Truck King YouTube channel to see what the heck we're testing next. See ya!